Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to
Something else.
something else, Daddy.
This is Nicole Matara, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
And welcome to episode 198 of Something Else. Feast your heroes on this week's episode as we take a look at NWA Total Nonstop Action, episode number 47 from May 28th, 2003. My name is Aria, and joining me is the second person in my life in the past 24 hours to get into some sort of car accident. It's Cindy. Cindy, what the hell's going on over there?
I just want to clarify there was no accident. I mean, we were getting out of the parking lot when it happened.
Okay.
The electric motor for the steering went dead.
That would make it difficult to drive the vehicle.
Yep.
Unless you want to go straight.
We couldn't even go straight. Even if we tried. Anyway, so stayed there with her for a couple of hours. Tow truck guy came after we tried. Another person thought they could fix it because it was an electric motor. No way to do it. But her roommates picked her up and dropped us off here. The car is safely parked here, and we're going to be okay.
That's good. When the roommates picked you guys up, did they bend at the knees or bend at the waist? Because, I mean, it's dangerous to bend at your waist when you pick people up.
They used telekinesis.
Wow. And plus, let's be honest here. Is it safe to use electric vehicles and electric engines when you live in a state where it never stops raining?
The entire body of the car is waterproofed.
Well, let's hope so. Unless you have some sort of superpower where you're going to shoot electricity out of your hands coming soon.
Nope.
Oh, this, by the way, more interesting than TNA this week.
I'll agree to disagree with that. We'll get to it. But this is an episode that kind of weaves an interesting tale. Didn't say it was a good tale, but it was an interesting tale.
We'll get to my thoughts, especially at the end of this show. I told the story last week and maybe a couple other times. When I originally watched these TNA shows like 2011, 2012, this was the last episode I watched. I gave up because, in my memory, it was so I could never watch Disco Inferno wrestle for a world title in my life. But good Lord, this show, I was already not wanting to watch this damn show anymore when Disco was the top heel getting a world title match. But the way this show went, my God. Well, you remember all the ranting and raving I did when AMW was getting a title shot and they lost, and Raven was getting a title shot and he was booked to be a chump? Remember all those rants I made in about 45 minutes? Because it's coming again, people. It's coming again. And I'm saying this ahead of time that Glenn Gilberti won his fucking match tonight. And I'm going to be ranting and raving when we get to that point. But let's dive in. So, as we do every week, we like to tell you what is the TNA news being reported this week in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And the big news is a continuation on the power struggle between Jeff Jarrett and Vince Russo. However, most people in the back tend to believe that it's complete bullshit because at the end of the day, it is well known that if Vince Russo does not get his way, he just throws a hissy fit and doesn't come back to work anymore. And that's where we currently, and yeah, he's still in the goddamn company. Um, his, and I guess at this point, Glenn Gilberti, and Raven are all arguing with Dixie Carter that Jeff Jarrett shouldn't have any control anymore. And Jeff Jarrett, who is a part owner in the company, is basically laughing at them for this. And yeah, that's where we are. Russo says that him and Disco write the shows on Thursdays, send it to Jeff, and then Jeff doesn't get it back to them until late Tuesday night, where Russo is too tired to argue with Jarrett, and the shows go through whatever Jarrett's edited version is. And when you see some of this shit, you're like, man, Jeff Jarrett needs to not just edit, Jeff Jarrett needs to hack. But yeah. And remember last week when Mortimer Plumtree was the backup ring announcer?
Yeah.
Mortimer Plumtree left the company this week. He had moved to Nashville while his wife stayed home in Minneapolis. And well, it's time to go home, Mortimer. It's time to go home. And one of those notes we haven't said in a couple of weeks, but because, if I don't have the news, I can't share it. The attendance for this show was about 850, but of those 850, only about a third of which were paid. So give or take around 280 people. So on to the show. The show starts in the parking lot where Glenn Gilberti has confronted Julio and Alexis outside, telling them to tell Raven that he will kick his ass tonight. Now, we never saw our weekly 15 segments of people trying to find Raven backstage, so it's possible that Julio and Alexis never found Raven. And when we get to the main event, when they run in, it's possible that's them finally delivering the message. We cannot prove otherwise.
Well, there might have been something. You might have to watch Explosion or something, but who knows?
Yeah, no. But yeah. So we go to our first match here. It is AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown versus CM Punk and Jason Cross. The story is that Punk and Jason Cross wrestled each other on the four-way elimination match last week and earned each other's respect. So they formed a team. Now, this was a slightly more was a slightly more competitive job match. Basic, I know. I thought Punk and Cross worked really well together. I don't know anything about Jason Cross's personality or lack thereof, so it may not mesh in that way, but at least I thought their in-ring continuity was good here.
Yeah.
Punk broke out the Devil Lock DDT on AJ, who they got the heat on. D'Lo got the hot tag. The crowd got into AJ and D'Lo doing all their cool moves, and it ended with AJ and D'Lo picking up the win with a double pin after a springboard 450 by AJ and a frog splash by D'Lo. A perfectly adequate match here to kick off the show.
Yeah, I totally agree. This reminded me a lot like a Impact X Division match. Short, very sweet, to the point. Had a story. Not much of one, but it did have one. And I thought it was fine.
Now, you might hear this and think, hey, this tag team division may suck, but at least they got a couple of good teams here. We have AMW, we have Triple X, we have AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown.
Hold it!
Wait a second before we get to that. After the match, AJ and D'Lo take the mic and say that it's been great teaming with each other, But the time has come after 2 long months to end their team, as both want to be the NWA champion. This, of course, is burying the tag team division even further than it was already. However, it does make sense since both feel that Jeff Jarrett was behind them becoming a team so he could have 2 fewer challengers. D'Lo called Jeff Jarrett the game, which led to a Triple J chant, which I gotta admit was kind of cute.
Yeah, it was cute, and I liked it.
AJ and D'Lo shook hands, and shockingly, neither turned on the other or attacked each other. They just walked to the back. And, I'm going to count this without ever seeing the original script. I'm going to count this as one of those things that Jeff Jarrett has been doing a good job of slicing and dicing out of Russo's scripts when we have a main event that's going to be overbooked to hell to not overbook the undercard. Now, this was, in fact, a loser leaves town for 9 months match for Jason Cross. So we're not going to see him until a one-off appearance next February. But a good solid opener. Gave it a 5.0 out of 10.
Exactly what I gave it, 5 out of 10. Don't cry for Punk. He will stick around for a while, bouncing between this Ring of Honor and I want to say Japan, I think.
Not really, but but anyway, so tonight's card, main event Glenn Gilberti versus Raven, Sandman and Sonny Siaki versus a mystery team, and Jerry Lynn and Just Incredible versus Chris Harris. And the reason for that is because James Storm was not here for personal reasons, and because we have this stupid tournament that we have to fucking do, and we have to get done by a certain date. We can't just delay it 1 week. We need to have Chris Harris in a match. And so tonight, Chris Harris can either wrestle by himself or find a partner for this one match. Because despite what we saw a few weeks ago, they are not done teasing dissension with Chris Harris and James Storm.
And they haven't quit for the next 4 years.
Well, that's not true. Like, once Russo gets us out of his system here, and I know it's coming soon, they don't tease breaking up until they actually break up. And that's not till 06.
07.
Nah, pretty sure it was 06.
No, they were a tag team until 07.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure because it was them and Gail Kim because the lockdown match, the blindfold match was in 2007.
Yeah.
And that was and that was when whatchamacallit, they'd broken up. They had a match with LAX that I think was a flag match, and they became the American team that loses the flag match to the foreign team. And at some point, either at that show or on Impact, James Storm cracked him in the head with a bottle, and it quote unquote blinded him. And it led to him forcing Gail Kim to be with him for several months because you can do that, apparently.
Okay. They were forced to break up December 14th, 2006. So talk about skinnier teeth there. But the feud didn't continue. The feud between them didn't start until the Against All Odds pay-per-view.
Because they took Chris Harris off TV for a few months to actually sell the injury, which it's Vince Russo, so we should all be grateful that Chris Harris wasn't back at the end of the show with glass in his eye and attacking James Storm. Let's be honest here. So after that, we see footage of Jeff Jarrett and Jeremy Borash in New Zealand and Australia for the WWA pay-per-views, which included Jeff Jarrett pinning Sting. And we also saw the announce team from Hell which was Jeremy Borash and Glenn Gilberti, was the announced team for that pay-per-view. In other news, this company went out of business and never ran another show. It was
They
announced
claimed
that
the reason was that they didn't have a TV deal.
which is hilarious because that was never their intention from the beginning. But oh well.
I'm just saying what Andrew McManus was saying in an interview 10 years after the fact. WrestleSpective's got a great video on World Wrestling All-Stars. I suggest you check it out.
And they announced that the long-avoided Jeff Jarrett Disco Inferno World Title match is in fact next week. Now,
episode 200 of Something Else with Aria.
Actually,
Disco Inferno versus Jeff Jarrett.
Actually, I don't think so. I think I fucked up and said the wrong episode name. 1 second.
You said 198.
I know, but I fucked up and said the wrong episode number. This is 196. So, oh darn. Also, this show is canceled after this week, so I never have to watch this show ever again.
Oh no! Okay. You're sticking around.
Oh, we'll see about that. I can wear tape over my mouth next week. So we've spent 3 months now building up to this moment where Glenn Gilberti is going to get a world title shot. We've had week after week after week of promo after promo after promo about how he's going to win the world title. We had NWO Nitro a few weeks ago when, when the Heresies were on the show 15 times attacking people. We had, it was that show that ended with him in the back smoking a cigar surrounded by all the carnage. We had, him doing that pre-tape video interview last week where he talked about when he wins the world title, the show is going to be called Sex Presents TNA. So with that said, on this, the final show, obviously, we're going to get the two of them cutting a good spirited final promo on each other. So it's time for a shoot, bro. Jeff Jarrett comes to the ring, the world champion, 7 days before a title defense that again has been built up for months. And so Jarrett storms to the ring and tells the fan, like there's fucking, 50 fans in the corner booing him. And this was like when Dusty Rhodes got unnerved by the people at not center stage, but the studio where they used to tape World Championship Wrestling, when there'd be a handful of fans in the corner who hated him, and he would start calling people out. Instead here, Jeff Jarrett, the top babyface, unnerved by the 50 people in the corner of the building who were booing him, and he, shoots on them, bro, and saying the fans didn't understand what it's like to walk in his shoes. And then, hey, it's time for the meat and potatoes of this promo, bro.
Yep.
He tells Raven to stop shooting up and come out. Yes, Raven, who, if you recall, is not Glenn Gilberti. Raven put down the needles, came out, and said Jarrett was a pussy, and all but said the only reason he was the champion was because he owned the company. Jarrett essentially replied saying that Raven would have been champion long ago, but he was a drug addict and a disgrace. After all that, Jarrett finally agreed to a title match, and the segment ended with a man in a suit coming out and handing Jarrett an envelope. Jarrett did not like the contents of the envelope and stormed away. And notably, Jarrett did not mention his top contender, and Raven never mentioned the fucking Amazing Red who put him through a table last week. What a big deal that was, wasn't it? And by this point, by the end of this promo,
we'll get mentioned later on. Don't worry.
This show is 25 minutes old, and I didn't mention this, but during that promo, they brought up Shane and Stephanie McMahon. So 25 minutes into the show, we bringing up Triple H, Shane McMahon, and Stephanie McMahon, again telling you that the real stars are on the other channel, wrestling on a show that you don't have to pay to watch.
In a real down period for them, no less. 2003, they lost money.
Thoughts on this crap heap of a promo?
This is the segment that actually turned Raven face. Believe it or not, this is the segment. Because I was watching the crowd. I know there's the heel section that's right by the rampway. But I was looking at the crowd. It might be the 50 that you're talking about on the left-hand side. But it seems like the crowd was cheering more for Raven than they were for Jeff Jarrett.
That doesn't make him a babyface. That just makes it a crowd that doesn't like Jarrett.
Nevertheless.
Keep in mind, Russo is trying to make Jarrett turn heel and trying to babyface. But it's not, the reason for it here.
But the crowd doesn't like Jarrett anyways.
Exactly, but he's still a babyface until like October. So
yeah, and that's where it becomes unbearable, and that's without Russo.
So, in case you're wondering what the man in a suit was delivering to Jeff Jarrett screamed at Mike Tenay, and then we went to the SCX locker room where main event Glenn Gilberti was laughing that he just had Raven suspended. I think he meant that he had Jarrett suspended.
That's exactly word for word that I had written down.
Glenn said he was tired of people losing. And, Glenn, I'm sorry, but somebody has to lose in every match. But, yeah, so that was the closest that Glenn Gilberti or Jeff Jarrett come to talking about each other on this entire fucking show. So, yes, Jeff Jarrett is suspended. We'll see how well that works out, won't we?
Yeah.
All right. It's time for the continuation of the worst fucking tournament ever. It is the Asylum Alliance It is the Asylum Alliance tournament, and we have a first round match here. And of course, the point of this tournament is they're tired of the factions all beating each other up, and they're trying to promote competition. And the winners of this tournament are going to get a tag team title match. And every match in this tournament pretty much has showed you that nobody gives a fuck about the tag team titles. The teams in this one are Sandman and Sonny Siaki, who just had a main event match last week that didn't have a winner because Raven, who was the referee, basically refused to count. And their opponents, BG James, who apparently got over his dad not getting paid an extra $50, and Conan, who was last seen kind of teaming with Ron Killings. And BGJ, they note that BG was in SCX when he was last here, and they vaguely talk about the issues with Scott Armstrong and Bullet Bob, and wasn't even good enough to wrap it up. But yes, so
probably
again,
for the best.
Yeah. So again, this tournament's supposed to be all of the factions being teamed up. BG James and Conan not in any factions.
And yet they're already gelling like peanut butter and jelly. I mean, did you see when they started? I mean, the referees go to 10, and both of them just went, hands up, don't shoot.
So, Sandman refused to tag in or help as his partner got his ass kicked. What a fucking tournament. Let's see. This finish saw Sandman, Kane, his partner, and BG score the pin with the anal rape pump handle slam. Remember like a year ago when Bruce liked it and BG James, the man who regularly does anal rape to his opponent, got freaked out because somebody enjoyed it? Anyways,
Nobody cares.
again, Sandman
Neuralizer against Bruce. Doink.
Sandman was in a tournament for a tag team title match and couldn't be bothered to try to win. 1.0 out of 10.
This might have been Sandman's best match in TNA. And this is gonna go with my line of thinking for this entire show. I was fine with it. I mean, we at least got some continuity. We got some gelling with a team. This is the birth, kind of Three Life Crew.
Yippee.
Oh, Three Life Crew is a godsend when we get into October and November. I want you to remember this.
I'm going to say yippee, because I had to watch this stupid fucking tournament. Because there's apparently no other way to put two people together than to have this stupid fucking tournament. And speaking of this stupid fucking tournament, the lone bright spot in this is earlier today, New Jack is randomly throwing gallon jugs of water around because that apparently is supposed to symbolize what he plans to do with Slash later on. While this is happening, Shark Boy comes up and offers him a gift. The gift is a board game of Chutes and Ladders after last week where they bonded over playing Candyland. So now they're friends. And by the way, this team is such a good team that last week, despite getting along and working together, they lost to the team who could not stop fighting each other the whole fucking match. We then get a tournament.
Here's the thing: New Jack was competing in both tournaments.
Oh, he's not the only person doing that.
Well, Sandman did, and he probably did better than New Jack.
So then we get New Jack versus Slash in the Hard 10 tournament first round. I am convinced that the only reason we have this stupid Asylum Alliance tournament is so this stupid Hard 10 tournament is not the worst tournament ever by comparison. So just in case you forgot, and they managed to show us, I guess I'll call this a win. We got a 2-minute video package of last week's match between Mike Sanders and Primetime Brian Lee, which was all about reminding you of the point system. So guess what? We'll call that something of a win. They reminded you that you get 5 points if your opponent goes through the table. But again, it's not you put your opponent through a table, it's your opponent goes through a table. Regardless of you having anything to do with it, you get 5 points, or the opponent gets 5 points. And you get 1 point every time you use a strategically placed weapon. It has never, and I guarantee will never be explained what the fuck a strategically placed weapon is. Does this mean the Sandman cannot use his cane that he walks to the ring with? Or if he takes his cane and hands it to the audience and the audience hands it back to him, does that now make it a strategically placed weapon? Like literally, they found a way to do a point system match that's relatively simple, but instead of just leaving it, keeping it fucking simple, they managed to make it stupid and complicated. So Mike Sanders was introduced to do commentary. The less said about that, the better.
I actually enjoyed his commentary this week.
Of course you did.
It was so stupid that it turned around to being enjoyable.
So he ripped on Mike Tenay for 5 minutes. There's your commentary. And he ripped on Mike Tenay to the point that Don West just agreed with him so he wouldn't go after Don West. Anyway, this is the highest score you will ever see in one of these matches. They just took turns hitting each other in the head. Slash got an 8-3 lead, so Jack had to do a comeback because you have to win with 10 points, but you have to win by 2. So they just took turns hitting each other in the head until it got to 13-13. And because TNA combines all the fun of pro wrestling, points, and tennis into one presentation. And then Jack eventually tossed Slash through a table from the top rope for the 18-13 win. 2 down, 5 more of these to go. 2.0 out of 10.
What did I give this match? 5 out of 10. To me, it was average. Just enjoy people beating each other up. Turn your brain off. It was fine.
You enjoyed that as much as you enjoyed the opener?
Yeah.
Okay. Earlier today, Mike Tenay and Triple X argued about wrestling. Do you remember like 2 months ago when Mike Tenay and Vince Russo argued about wrestling? And then a week after that when Mike Tenay argued with Disco Inferno and Mike Sanders about wrestling? And I'm pretty sure there was one other instance of this. This was basically that, except Mike Tenay had more respect for the people he interviewed. Elix Skipper talked about being the NWA Tag Team Champion, but never mentioned anybody who he's beaten in TNA. However, he mentioned that he was the first Cruiserweight Tag Team Champion, beating Billy Kidman and Rey Mysterio. So again, he could not even brag that he defeated Jerry Lynn, he defeated Amazing Red, he defeated Chris Harris, James Storm, the stars of TNA. None of them even got even a hint of a name in this. However, he mentions beating the big stars over in the other company. I wouldn't even care that he said Rey Mysterio and Kidman if he would have mentioned anybody in TNA. Anybody. He's been here pretty much since the beginning. Like, yeah, he was a little off and on at the beginning, but he's been here pretty much for the whole time. And he's wrestled a lot of matches. He could list anybody. Anybody. I don't even care who. You didn't even have to say both of America's Most Wanted. You didn't have to say both Jerry Lynn and Amazing Red. You beat Jerry Lynn. You beat, and okay, fine. He didn't beat Jerry Lynn. It was a 2-on-1 handicap match with Daniels beating Jerry Lynn and Amazing Red. Fine. You beat Chris Harris and James Storm, who've been champions like 3 times on this show. That is something to brag about. Nope. Because Chris Harris and James Storm aren't stars because they're not in WWE. By the way, this is May 2003. Kidman is not being pushed either. So it's not even like, it's a really good brag at this point. Anyway, like I said, this is the wrestling versus sports entertainment debate with 2 people that Mike Tenay respects.
And I was just tuned it out. I mean, it was like, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
So
Back
we get
live.
to one of my favorite parts of the show.
Wait. I got to explain this first part first. We go back live where Mike Tenay screams that something is happening outside. Now, what is happening outside?
Well,
I'll tell you what's happening outside. He frantically pitches it to the outside, and what's happening is Ron and Don Harris are drinking beer. That's what they're doing. That is, if this shit is real, that is what Mike Tenay was so frantic that we had to watch. By the way, Ron and Don Harris, who I forgot to mention this, were told by Glenn Gilberti to go bring him Chris Harris earlier. So their search has brought them to the parking lot where they're drinking beer. That is what Mike Tenay was frantically telling us we needed to go watch. Why? Who knows? Luckily for Mike, we then got something that isn't that silly, but is about to become silly when I explain to you the follow-up here. But Ron Killings walks by and lured the Harrises into a trap where Conan and Truth beat down the twins.
Racial harmony.
Yes, the African American man and the Hispanic man beat down the bald Nazis. Yippee.
Makes you proud to be an American.
Now, keep in mind, they beat down the Harrises with weapons. There was a soap and a sock, and there was something else that Truth was beating them up with. Now, this is the last time the Truth and Conan are on this show. This is the last time they are mentioned on this show. You know who is on this show multiple times? The Harrises. The same Harrises that just got their asses kicked. Now, at any point did the Harrises mention, we're going to fucking kill Ron Killings and Conan the next time we see them? Did Disco bring it up? Did Goldilocks bring it up? Did Tanae bring it up? Did Don West bring it up? Not on camera. But you know what Don West did do? In the pre-show production meeting, he asked about this. He asked, why are the Harrises coming out 2 or 3 times the rest of the show when they just got beaten up? And the only explanation Jeff Jarrett could give is, well, Don, it's 30 minutes later.
Makes sense. And plus, Ron and Don Harris are supposed to be badasses anyway, so yeah, makes sense.
So they're badasses. They're not even selling. Do you see them backstage at one point? They're not like rubbing their head. They're not like they're not like pantomiming that they're going to kick somebody's ass. No, they're just standing there. They're just standing there. So what was the point of this?
We've seen this with Heavy D before. I mean, remember when Malice kicked the living crap out of him at the beginning? Did he go off?
He didn't come back. He didn't come back 20 minutes later.
But you still calm. Well, that's because Malice wasn't on the rest of the show.
Ron Killings and Conan aren't on the rest of the show.
Exactly. So it's no.
Yeah. What do you mean exactly? Like, we're not comparing exact things here because when Malice beat up Don Harris didn't come out the rest of the show. When Ron Killings and Conan beat up the Harrises, not only were they both back, neither of them sold anything that happened. And it's not like, SCX doesn't have 50 fucking people in it. They could have easily had Mike Sanders and Sonny Siaki fill in the spots instead of Ron and Don. But I guess Siaki does come out in the main event. You could have Mike Sanders and David Young come out, and we'll get to that. But they didn't have to be Ron and Don Harris. If Ron and Don Harris weren't in that backstage skit that we'll get to in a few minutes, would anybody have noticed? No,
not really.
Like, God.
So Goldie's with the SATs. And this is where they bring up Amazing Red just beating up Raven at the end of the show last week. They said they're proud of their cousin, and they're off to their title match against Triple X. Well, non-title match, I'll say, against Triple X.
Well,
and then Eric Watts shows up.
This is 45, 50 minutes into the show?
Yeah.
Someone finally brings up the closing out last week. I guess that's better than all those weeks that Alexis Lurie got brained in the head the one week, and the next week Dusty Rhodes got brained in the head with shares, and it never got mentioned again. So I guess at least this was slightly better than that. Slightly.
And then the romance nobody knew we wanted and nobody cared to have. Eric Watts shows up and essentially lures Goldilocks away.
I wrote the segment ended with Eric Watts stealing Goldilocks. Why? Because
around this time, weren't those two actually a couple?
I don't know, and I don't think anyone really cares. Honestly, I'm just trying to to keep remembering if it's Eric with a C or a K. And I'm pretty sure it's a K.
It's a K. And now we get to a match that was way more than okay. Triple X versus the SATs.
All right. So those are going to get into. We know Triple X is technically 3 people, but A, Low-Key is injured, and B, Low-Key is rarely on this show. So unless otherwise noted, from now on, when we say Triple X, it's Daniels and Skipper. So, by the way, this is the Maximo's return to the company since they turned heel in February to side with Conan and then were never seen again. They were in that #1 contenders match where they were like the first 2 people eliminated, and then they came back to beat up the winner, Jerry Lynn, at the end of the match, turning heel in the process. And that started the Jerry Lynn Conan rivalry, which, by the way, spoiler alert, hey, big news. On this show, we're going to finally bring the Jerry Lynn Conan rivalry to an end. So, add the Maximos to the list of teams who were passed over for a shot in the tag team title tournament, while Sonny Siaki and Sandman, Kid Cash and Trinity, and David Young and Tracy Brooks, Ron Killings and Don Harris, New Jack and Shark Boy, all of these other teams were good enough to be in the tournament. The SAT were not good enough to be in the tournament. I would be a lot more condescending, by the way, if TNA had more than 4 teams, and one of which broke up about 40 minutes ago. Now, we did get some breaking news here during this match. Jeff Jarrett's suspension is official. However, it's only for today. Now, I feel like before anybody raises an eyebrow or questions why, last July, Jeff Jarrett was suspended for 90 days. He never missed the show, and then the suspension was lifted because he didn't go to a mandatory meeting.
Meh.
Yeah, remember that great angle wasn't that the episode with the iron brick that Ken Shamrock put the iron brick in front of a room that
No, that
had a
was
door in the back?
long after. This was like when Killings was champion.
I don't know about that because it was all around the end of July, beginning of August.
Who knows? Who cares?
So remember the last match of 2002? It was that 6-man tag with Triple X versus SAT and Red, which brought the fucking crowd down, which fucking killed they fucking killed. The crowd was super hot. All 6 guys went balls to the walls on the final match of 2002, and it was a fucking great match that never got brought up again because, again, we are half-ass pushing Amazing Red. However, the fans, while into this match, were not even close to how hot they were 6 months ago.
No.
The champs picked up the win when Skipper walked the top rope and gave Jose a hurricanrana while he was seated on the top rope for the pin. The Maximos did get some hot near falls, but no one gave them a shot at winning here, mostly because, again, the last time we saw them, they were heels, and they never even won matches then. And at this point, I wrote, is Russo sick? We're getting a lot of clean finishes on this show. And then, because, bro, it all makes sense, bro, Raven comes out after the match and gives both Maximos an even flow DDT. And that is the swan song for the SAT. This is a loser leaves town match for them. And we never see the SAT ever again on this show.
And nothing of value was lost.
Yeah, on the show where we have Disco Inferno and Mike Sanders and some of the shit the shit we're about to see in the next segment. Nothing of value was lost when the SAT stopped coming on the show. So anyway, 6.5 out of 10, which I'm feeling generous on that one, but Again, if I'm going to watch some good wrestling on this show, I'm going to at least give them a little bit of.
I give it an 8 out of 10. I really love this match.
So then, Amateur Hour was about to break out to the SCX locker room where Glenn was mad that the Harrises haven't returned with Chris Harris. At this point, Tracy Brooks walks in and slaps Desire. This leads to a cat fight. David Young wanted to break it up, but Mike Sanders held him back and told him to let the bitches fight. Tracy was wearing next to nothing, and Desire was just in a bra and jeans. The two of them fought to the ring, and we had the worst spear of all time. Now,
no, there have been worse.
Oh, God, no. Okay. People used to complain all the time about Edge's spear, that it wasn't very good. If you have ever once in your life complained about Edge's spear, I dare you to try to tell me about a spear that I don't even know. I think Tracy was trying to give it, and it was so fucked up that Desire turned it into an STO. And no, I refuse to believe that the plan was for Desire, who's like 115 pounds, to block the 110-pound woman and, doing a spear and give her an STO.
You
Outskip
don't know.
David Young.
Daniels could have trained her to use the STO.
Outskip David Young, who, by the way, he was happy to be partners with this woman with large breasts in the tag team tournament. A woman that he won the first round match with and is moving on to the second round. So, of course, it's a swerve, bro. David Young had to drop Tracy with a spine buster. And then because everybody in this fucking company is incompetent, Borash screams that Tracy hurt her neck. And so then the staff in charge of helping Tracy out, who apparently has injured her neck, according to the ring announcer. They rolled her over towards the apron of the ring and then carried her out. Don't do that to people with neck injuries. When is
The
this
nurse who
fucking
normally does this stuff was preoccupied. We'll get to that in a minute.
And this isn't even like I don't even know if this is the worst thing involving women on this show, because Jesus Christ, it's this wasn't a match, but if it was, I would have given it a 0. And this is where we get degrees of 0 during the show. So yeah, Tracy Brooks, who, remember, never a really polished worker. She did not get her job in this company because she was a good in-ring wrestler. Backstage, Eric Watts and Goldie are talking about having sex last week, but Goldie didn't want to have sex right now because they're in a closet. That was her only issue, was that they were in a closet. She did not seem to have a problem with a cameraman and a sound guy being in the room with them. You might think I'm making this up. I am not making this up.
No, she isn't, folks. No, she isn't. Remember, last week when Goldilocks allowed them to film her berating a person at the Singular Wireless store.
Never brought up again.
Good.
Which continues the point of, what the fuck was the point of that? And I don't want to hear that in 6 months Goldilocks is going to turn heel. I don't want to hear tomorrow Goldilocks is going to turn heel. Like, what was the fucking reason of that? Which again made TNA look second rate, because I don't care if the people didn't really know who the hell she was. You tell the people in advance, hey, this person's with TNA. She is a star. Act like you're seeing a star out in public.
As somebody who's worked retail in a place like that, You're told to treat everybody equally. You don't give a damn if they're a star or not.
This is not about treating anybody equally. This is not a shoot.
That was
Goldilocks did
supposed.
not.
Here's the thing: they treated it like it was a shoot, though.
But nobody in their right fucking mind thought it was. It doesn't matter if that's what happens in real life. The point is, this is a star who's coming into your store, and like it doesn't matter if at the end of the day you're still not going to replace her phone and she's going to throw a temper tantrum. The point is, you have the fucking guy say, "Oh my God, it's Goldilocks from TNA." But no, because again, TNA, these people aren't stars. If I don't know who the fuck the backstage announcer is in WWE. It fucking A. Like I I don't even fucking know.
Current or in 2003?
Now.
Nobody cares.
The point is, if they did a skit where whoever the hell the backstage announcer is in WWE right now was to go to a store, and even if they went in and whoever was working the store had no fucking idea who this person was, what they would do is do the "oh my God, it's so and so from WWE" to make them look like a star, to make them look like somebody. The point of this was that, the random person on the street did not know who the hell this woman was. She threw a temper tantrum that we had to watch on TV, and then we never saw again. We never found out a reason for it. So did she do this before or after she had sex with Eric Watts last week? Because apparently she really had sex with Eric. I guess it had to be after or before she had sex with Eric Watts, because she broke the phone 2 weeks ago. It got aired last week, and at some point in the past week, she had sex with Eric Watts.
Time well spent, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, time well spent. Like fucking watching this show and talking about it. It's like Jesus Christ.
So Don West was happy that Eric Watts got with Goldie, so well done, I guess. And then we get this stupid segment. Okay. Can I take lead on this?
Oh, you can take lead on it all you want.
So, the promo package we aired is about Kid Cash and this luchador. By the way, a couple of weeks ago, the jig was already given up by Conan, who said that that's not a luchador, it's a luchadora. Just look at the chest. Those are his exact words.
Which, by the way, happened after the luchador grew breasts.
So we get the promo package. If you remember last week, we got the Return of the Black Scorpion voice box. And that was pre-taped, by the way, which was glorious. So it kind of threw the heat off Trinity. Kind of. Which, by the way, the luchador's Trinity. Now we have Kid Cash waiting for Goldie for his promo. So while Goldie and Eric are getting it on, Kid Cash is standing with his dick out. Some nurse comes in for a checkup, and Kid Cash is upset after she is willing to check out Kid Cash orally. Kid Cash, in his mind, thinks he's being set up by Trinity. I don't think she was set in by Trinity. And then, after her life was put in danger, she went all Bobby Hill. That's my purse. I don't know you. Dick. Knee to the dick and beats him up. And then threatens a rectal exam. This is furthering the Kid Cash hates women storyline that's been going on the past 2 months. It's not just relegated to Trinity. I mean, he's had it out with Goldie and now Nurse Ratchet, or whatever her name might be. I don't know. She wasn't named. But nice to know that they got the nurse outfit from the latest Playboy video. Or wait, that's too high class. Hustler video, we'll say.
This was Nurse Veronica from Ring of Honor, for those who remember or care. So, by the way, who also goes on to become Simply Luscious. So, Kid Cash's match is right now. So, you're telling me what even was the point of this happening? You're like, either Trinity is setting him up to again have somebody put icy hot on his balls like last time, or some random woman, showed up to the asylum in a nurse's uniform and wanted to jerk off Kid Cash seconds before his match. She couldn't have jerked Kid Cash off 30 minutes ago? 2 hours ago? Earlier in the day when they were still in the hotel room? It had to be right now, seconds before the match? And we've seen the backstage area. It's not that big, but still, Kid Cash leaves this segment laying on the ground, writhing in pain. At that exact moment, as soon as he is now being left laying on the ground, writhing in pain, the luchador's music hits, the luchador walks to the ring, and then Kid Cash's music immediately hits, and Kid Cash is standing and walking to the ring. So in the 10 seconds it took the luchador to walk to the ring, Kid Cash recovered enough to stand up and walk the, I don't know, generously 50 to 100 feet to the curtain and then down to the ring while holding his balls. And then, we can't even pretend anything on this show. So this masked luchador, which started in February with the Kona and Jerry Lynn feud, and then grew breasts at one point, takes the mask off, and it's Trinity. What a shock. I did not see that coming. All right. So, Trinity's been on this show since October or November. She came in with Divine Storm. Remember them?
Yeah.
And she would do she would do the moonsault. She would break out a Hurricanrana every so often. She was TNA's Lita when Lita was with the Hardy Boys and with S.A. Rios, and she'd just go out there and do one or two high spots and the crowd would get into it. However, we can't just let her do one or two high spots. We have to have her have a match. Now, as we mentioned, Trinity has two moves. A Hurricanrana and a moonsault. So, she proceeded to fuck up the first one, the Hurricanrana. Cash then almost scored the pin with the Iron Claw, but Trinity punched him in the balls. Not a disqualification. Trinity fucked up climbing to the top rope. Seriously? And then Trinity, as we mentioned, only has two moves. And she fucked up the second one, the moonsault, landing right on top of her fucking head. And then Kid Cash ended this atrocity with a sit-out tombstone piledriver. After the match, Kid Cash threatened to both rape and kill Trinity. I cannot believe that I'm watching this, and I cannot believe this is worse than that fucking tag match earlier. 0 out of 10.
There's no glossing over it. We have seen more offensive matches on this show. Bruce matches with women, stuff like that. This is one of the worst matches we've seen on this show. I mean, nothing was done right. She also fucked up a powerbomb and almost necked Kid Cash with it. There was no move done in this match correctly, except for two. Iron Claw and the Tombstone. Or, okay, the Moneymaker, whatever. It's just a comedy of errors, and the errors are in big red glowing lights. Maybe this match was why TNA didn't have a women's division until 2007.
Oh, these shitty women's matches every single fucking week. You know?
I mean, I'm not putting the blame entirely on Kid Cash. We know Kid Cash is a good worker, but there's only so much you can do. And this was supposed to be the payoff, and we didn't get it. And we'll never get it. Spoiler.
What payoff would we really fucking want in this? Like Kid Cash beats up women, but at the end of the fucking day, he should not have been losing this match to a woman. Also, that shouldn't have been the stupid ending with. No, another shit shows.
So what should okay? If you're gonna book this, what should they have done? Have Trinity bring in somebody else to beat up Kid Cash?
Yes, yes, that's a pretty simple thing. And you then, in the middle of that match, you have Trinity do her 2 spots. You know, maybe she would have still fucked it up, but she wouldn't have fucked it up after going through a fucking match first. Literally, it's not that hard. Trinity's bringing in someone to go after Kid Cash. They bring in 1,000 people.
Okay, here you go. Who does she bring in? You have to use somebody from the roster.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just have anybody do it. You know, you allegedly have you have half a roster full of baby faces. Baby faces was a stand up for a woman who is put down and yada yada yada. Send out the fucking Sandman. Actually, I'm sorry. He quote unquote wrestled on this show.
Where the hell's Perry Saturn?
There you go. Send a fucking Perry Saturn. You know, I don't know who the fuck else is out there, but you know, it ain't that fucking hard. It's really fucking not. And then the whole point is, Kid Cash gets embarrassed because not only did he get beat by his male opponent, but the woman that he held down and controlled, she got the better of him by not just outsmarting him with a good opponent, but by hitting her move on him. And then you just move on with your life. Kid Cash can live to wrestle and feud with somebody else. And nope, we can't have. Oh, yeah. And then because, you know, and I know that there's some alliance with them, so I don't even know how it comes about. But now Kid Cash is mad because Trinity brought in a man to beat him up, and now he needs a heater. He needs some big motherfucking monster to stand behind him. And because I know Abyss is coming in at some point, he brings in Abyss.
Abyss is already here. He's working Explosion.
Not at this point, he wasn't. But anyway, we can't make things too fucking easy on this show. Speaking of which, Jeff Jarrett, who is suspended, is refusing to leave. Is it really hard to just take a week off and get paid? He did it last week, and he wasn't suspended then. By the way, when children are grounded and don't adhere to their punishment, do you just stop punishing them? Because, spoiler, Jeff Jarrett's here next week. He's going to be here the week after that, and the week after that, and I bet the week after that, and I bet pretty much every week until, his wife has health issues. He's going to be here every fucking week. Ron and Dawn finally brought Chris Harris to the SCX locker room. Glenn said they like Chris and is offering him the services of Chris Sabin as his partner for tonight. This, by the way, is the first time Chris Sabin has been on TV since winning the X Division title 2 weeks ago. At least, they tried to come up with a reason for this, because they never fucking paid off the is Chris Harris going to join SEX thing. And so at least they were able to come up with a fucking crumb of logic to say why Chris Harris is now randomly teaming with Chris Sabin. And then, hey, one up on the Hard 10 tournament, we finally got fucking brackets for the worst tournament ever. And the brackets, in case you forget some of these fucking matches, Don Harris and The Truth defeated New Jack and Shark Boy. Tracy and David Young defeated Trinity and Kid Cash, which means next week those two teams are wrestling each other, because what the world wants is Don Harris and Tracy Brooks wrestling each other. Then, earlier today, BG James and Conan beat Sandman Sanisiaki. And then we have this, the final match in the first round, Justin Credible and Jerry Lynn versus America's Most Wanted. Except, not only is that not what happened, but we'll get to the after the match, what they do then. So it is Chris Harris and Chris Sabin versus Justin Credible and Jerry Lynn in the Asylum Alliance Tournament first round match. Let me predict the future here. The Chris's win, and then next week Storm is back, and he and Harris argue about why Harris teamed with Sabin and blah, blah, blah. Don West predicts the future and says Sabin will be a star and is a potential future world champion. Now, I should have known. I should have fucking known. Because when do they ever talk about history on this show? I should have fucking known how the end of this match was going to go, because they would not shut up about how Justin Credible and Jerry Lynn feuded in ECW and how Jerry Lynn beat him for the ECW title in 2000. It's one thing to mention it in passing. It's another to not shut up about it. And they did not shut up about it. Now, this is TNA, so I have no bloody idea who's supposed to be the babyface and who's supposed to be the heel, because Harris and Sabin got the heat on Lynn. Sabin is in SAX, which makes him a heel. Harris is a tweener. Lynn is the only person in this company who's an actual straight-out babyface. And Justin Credible, I still have no fucking idea, because remember like 5 weeks ago when all of Extreme Revolution turned heel and it was immediately ignored? That. Lynn made the hot tag. We break down into a Pier 6 brawl. Lynn and Credible were on the verge of winning the match, but they disagreed on who should get the win, so Sabin rolled up Credible for the win. Meaning that there are now 4 teams left in this tournament for a tag team title match. One fought each other, one got along, one's a man and a woman, where the man just beat up the woman, an hour ago, and the 4th team did not even wrestle in the first round together. Greatest tournament ever, right? After the match, Lynn and Credible argued and got into a fight. 7 guys held back Credible, while one guy who weighed approximately 105 pounds held down Jerry Lynn. Jerry called Justin an asshole because they get along for 10 minutes and have one misstep, and now they hate each other. And unfortunately, because this was the one good match in this tournament, which I guess by default makes this not the dirt worst tournament of all time. We still have never gotten to the reverse battle royal fight for the right tournament. And we will never get to it. Never, never, never. We will end this show long before 2006.
Yep.
So again, we're going to give this a higher score than it probably deserved. 5.5 out of 10.
I thought it was good. I mean, early on it looked like they were getting along. I mean, Sabin and Harris were getting along. It's just that I understand the reasoning of the arguing, because Justin Credible was legal. Jerry Lynn couldn't pin him because he wasn't the legal man.
Yeah, that's a big deal in TNA, is following the rules.
Yeah. So Credible wanted to do the tombstone as he was legal. And this is Lynn getting pissed off because in his mind, he got screwed over again when it was his own fault. I mean, what else can we say? It was his fault.
Alrighty, so because Eric Watts and Goldilocks are fucking, and Goldilocks, who knows why, just decided to not show up anymore. Eric Watts decided to be the backstage interviewer and talk to Raven about his match with Glenn Gilberti. Raven threatened to pee in Eric Watts' eye holes. That is
Refuses
legitimately
because he
what
made him
happened.
laugh.
Yes.
But Eric turned it around and said, look, I could be serious, dude. I know what's bugging him, which is the bullshit chants and the politics. So I'm going to get out of your way so you can kick some ass. And he did. I mean, Watts is a goof ass, but at least he knows to stop being a goof ass. Like, it's fine to be a goof ass around Goldie, but when you're with Raven, you stop.
Next week, Don Harris and The Truth versus Tracy and David Young. And then this one bugged the hell out of me. BG James and Conan versus Chris Harrison ? Why are we doing this bullshit? Just fucking say it's James Storm. This is already a bullshit tournament that is turning the fucking tag team division to a joke. Just fucking say it's James Storm. Nope. Instead, we can't just say James Storm. We have to fucking make it interesting. Ooh, ah. And then Jeff Jarrett versus Glenn Gilberti for the World Heavyweight title. And normally I'd say at least they announced matches, but these are the matches they announced. Then we get the main event on this show. Main event Glenn Gilberti versus Raven with 18 minutes left on the show. Now, there is a story behind this. So, over the weekend, at a Scott D'Amore show in Canada, Raven got a concussion and did not want to wrestle and was trying to get the match pushed back a week. Jeff Jarrett said no. And Jeff Jarrett basically said, we can do a 5-minute match, but at the end of the day, you're putting over Glenn Gilberti tonight. And Raven, out of spite, decided, no, he's not going to do a 5-minute match. We had to get the whole 15 minutes here. And so we get the TNA main event match where you fight all over the building and hit each other with weapons. Now, to Glenn Gilberti's credit, Raven has a concussion. And they're doing a match where it involves a lot of plunder, a lot of stupid stuff. And Glenn Gilberti, whose offense is not that great to begin with, is doing his damnedest to avoid hitting Raven in or near the head. Good for him for once in his frickin' life. We fight back to the ring where the out-of-control brawl breaks down into a singles match. After 7-ish minutes of decent brawling, Ron and Don Harris return and hit the ring. Now, Ron and Don Harris are approximately 6'5" tall each. They're about 260, 270 pounds each. They're thick, muscly, biker guys who look like the kind of guy that goes to bars to pick fights. To make the save for Raven from these two 6'5", 270-pound biker guys who go to bars to get into fights are Julio De Niro and Alexis Lurie. Julio De Niro, approximately 5'10", 190 pounds. Alexis Lurie is Mickey James. You all know what she looks like, and you all know how big she is not. So Julio and Alexis fight with the Harrises, and then they leave. Raven plays fiery babyface after a way too long period where Glenn worked on the leg of Raven. Sonny Siaki saunters out as Raven hits Glenn with a DDT. Siaki pulls the ref out. Glenn gets a near fall off a low blow and a stunner. The referee takes a bump as Raven super kicks Glenn. ECW apparently won't die because Sandman now comes out as the sixth person to interfere, and he canes Raven. Jeff Jarrett, who is suspended, by the way, comes out, attacks Sandman, and drags him away. Yeah, Jeff Jarrett attacked the Sandman. I don't care what bingo card you're on. That was on nobody's bingo card ever.
There was a reason for it, though. Remember during the promo, we forgot to mention this because we kind of blacked it out. I was just looking at my notes about it. Jeff Jarrett said he was going to protect Raven so they could have their match or their rematch.
Then, so we just had 7 people interfere. And the last thing here was Sandman attacking Raven with a kendo stick. So, next week, Glenn Gilberti is getting a world title match. It doesn't matter what you think about it. Obviously, I hate it. But the fact is, you're doing it. The fact is, that is the match next week. Disco Inferno is wrestling for the world title. And on this, the final match on the go-home show to the biggest match of Disco Inferno's career, after 7 people have interfered, the finish is pretty fucking obvious. Disco gets up, hits his finish on Raven, and pins him. However, again, let's run down everybody who interfered in this match. Ron Harris, 6'5" biker dude. Don Harris, 6'5" biker dude. Julio De Niro, Alexis Lurie, Sonny Siaki, The Sandman, Jeff Jarrett. All of this, all of these stars, all of these future stars, all of these tough guys. Siaki is a former X Division champion. Alexis Lurie's, a future Hall of Famer. Jarrett's the world champion. All of these things, and Glenn Gilberti's wrestling for the world title next week. All of this is for naught. Because at the end of the fucking day, the most important person, the most important thing you need to fucking remember about this show is that the final fucking segment, the final fucking scene, is that running into the ring to cause the finish of the match. After everybody else has left the ring, after everyone else has been beaten up and attacked and did all this bullshit, the final fucking scene, the final reason why Disco Inferno wins this match is because the biggest fucking ego in the history of wrestling, Vince fucking Russo, returns. By the way, the last time he was on this show, Russo's kids were on TV crying and, talking about how he's never raised them, and so he left the company. That, by the way, is never going to get brought up again. I'll bet you $10 on that one.
I'll take that bet and you lose.
Vince Russo walks out with a bat and hits Raven with it, and Glenn wins, and that's how the show goes off the air. Yeah, the guy getting the world title match next week not only couldn't win a match, but needed the egotistical, unathletic head writer of the show to book himself in a spot to win the fucking match for him. 8 fucking people had to interfere in this match. And yeah, at least they kept the overbooking nonsense for the main event. But after this fucking match, what part of this and what part of this show was supposed to make you want to watch Jeff Jarrett versus Disco Inferno next week? You know what this show did? It flushed down the drain the last 3 months of shows. They have been building up Disco Inferno since the end of February, where it was after Russo left. They immediately started on the Disco Inferno was now the leader of SEX. He is now cutting promos every week. He is now wrestling and winning matches every week. He is now challenging for the world title, and now on this, the go-home show that all got flushed down the fucking toilet. And if at the end of the day it's because they realized how stupid that was, then then they should have just had the fucking match this week, have it be the opener, go 5 minutes, Jarrett wins, and you move on with your fucking life. Instead, this show was supposed to tell you and it convince you to buy next week's show because Glenn Gilberti is a credible challenger to the world title. This is why I quit watching this fucking show the first time. Fuck this show.
So what'd you give the match?
2.5 out of 10.
I didn't care, so I just gave it a 5. All the buffuggery. At least there were some decent moments there. I gotta be honest.
What?
I kind of enjoyed this week's show.
I'm not even going to take that bait.
No, I'm serious. I actually enjoyed it.
Well, I've said 10,000 words. Tell us why you feel the opposite.
I mean, some stupid funny moments won me over, like Eric Watts and Goldie, Sanders on commentary, the formation of the official formation of 3 Live Crew. And I really like Triple X versus the SATs, and most of Harrison Sabin versus Dressed Incredible and Jerry Lynn. And I also did enjoy the cat fight. Sure, a lot of the stuff on the show wasn't good, but I thought it was fine.
Okay, match quality on this show, 3.21. Again, keeping in mind we had all those good matches earlier in the show, and the average is still that low. Overall enjoyment, 3.5 out of 10. By the end of this show, I completely understood why I stopped watching these shows. Future build. What was the point of this show? It was to be a go-home show to the world title match next week. At what point did anybody involved in the world title match next week give a flying fuck that they were in a world title match next week? At no point. 0, 0, 0, 0 out of 10. The exact opposite of Jarrett versus Raven. Overall rating, 2.23. God. And I still have, and we have next week's show, which I'm sure next week with Broseph on the fucking show, I'm sure I'll just love that show. But whatever.
Yep, we'll have the Anarchy Asylum Alliance semifinals. We'll have another Hard 10. And I think somebody debuts next week. I'm not quite sure.
Well, that is it for this show. I'm done talking about it. Anything you want to say before we throw it off?
Yeah, I'm just during the show, my friend made it home, and she's okay.
Good. All right. So that's going to do it for this week's show. If you made it to the end, I don't know what to tell you. Thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.
Peace out anytime now.